regulations, which is the medical device regulation since a few years now, which I think in basic, they just want medical devices to be safe and effective. Focusing on the topic of today, there is one important article that most people in Europe in point of care manufacturing are very familiar about, is Article 5.5, which says that with the exception of the relevant safety and performance requirements, actually the MDR does not apply to devices that were manufactured in hospitals, providing that a list of around 8 conditions are met. And one of the conditions is that manufacturing and use of the devices have to occur under appropriate quality management systems. I know a lot of people are from the US. FDA is also looking at regulating point of care, I think, more strictly. They have released a discussion paper a little over a year ago. So I think we can expect some comments from them anytime soon now. What is a quality management system? Basically, it's like a master plan for doing things really well. It's not just about making products perfectly. It's also about having some clear rules on how to train your staff, how to deliver products, how you gather feedback, and how you fix problems. Think of a quality management system like the way a restaurant operates, for example. When you go to a restaurant, you not only expect delicious food, but also a clean environment, friendly service, accurate bills, and the restaurant's management has to make sure that everything works smoothly and not just the cooking process. So a quality management system basically is like a recipe for success that ensures that everything runs smoothly, customers are happy, and improvements are always being made. In your quality management system, you basically document what your facility does and how you do it. It's usually risk-based, meaning that higher risk activities require more inspection from your side, more measurements, validation, proper training, and you should record proof that you do as you say. So should an auditor come by or the health inspection, you have to be able to provide proof of training. If you say you train your engineers properly, show them proof of training. You have to be able to show measurements. If you're saying you're doing measurements, if you say you're doing income checks on the material that you use, show proof of that. Also CAPAs and feedback. And I know that documenting everything often feels like bureaucracy to a lot of people. That, in my opinion, depends a little bit on the rigidity of the document management system that you choose. But anyway, if something goes wrong in your process, your records will help you to find the underlying cause, and you will always see that you didn't even record enough. Going back briefly to Article 5.5 of the European MDR, maybe you noticed the word appropriate. So it speaks about manufacturing and use of devices occur under appropriate quality management systems. So you can wonder, what is appropriate? And there's another article in the MDR, Article 10.9, that speaks about the general obligations of manufacturers, where the MDR specifies some minimal requirements of a quality management system. Anyway, there is a standard for quality management system in medical devices, which is called ISO 13485, and that is definitely appropriate, I would say. Maybe even a little too much for a point of care facility, but definitely an excellent goal to strive for. After all, it's the industry standard. And I know that in the US, you have the FDA 21 CFR 820, which is actually very similar to ISO 13485. And the FDA has even proposed to adopt ISO 13485, so to harmonize them, so there will be even more similarities, I would say. In ISO 13485, I think document control is a famous requirement or infamous requirement. So you need a digital document management system for that. Paper really can't be controlled. And documents need to be reviewed and approved. You need to keep versioning. But it doesn't need to be an expensive system. I use a wiki system to build a QMS for my customers. It works like a charm, and it's very, very affordable. But let's zoom in on the risks in point-of-care 3D printing. And I've shown here a little workflow all the way from imaging to design, to pre-processing, to 3D printing, post-processing, testing, and final release of your part, and also the material influences the printing process and your work environment. And as an example, I took the printing of surgical fibula guides, which I know happens in some point-of-care facilities, which in Europe are considered class 2A devices, so already quite high risk class. And I just wanted to go through the different steps in the process and see what kind of risks you should consider and what quality considerations you should have. So if we talk about imaging, consider image resolution, but also image smoothing. If the radiology department smooths the images, what effect does it have on the quality of your input? Imaging artifacts are also always difficult to handle if you have to perform segmentation and get a proper 3D model. Then if we go to design, I know that many people are using various software packages in a row. So be careful about file format conversions if you're going from one software to another and back again. Take care of that. There can be voids in your design, and especially in resin printing, those can be a source of uncured resin down the road. If you have parts that are too thick, they can be improperly cured at the end. Thin parts can break. For pre-processing, obviously, you have to think about supports. You have to design support. Where do you place them? You shouldn't place too few, but also definitely not too many. Orientation in your build will also affect the accuracy and the surface quality, among others. Location in the build is even important. Printers usually print more accurate in the center. Then, if you really talk about the additive manufacturing process, and I think additive manufacturing is quite a unique process in that sense that during the printing, you're actually also processing the material, which is unlike machining, for example, milling, where you have the final material. But during printing, you're always processing the material as you are shaping your part. So risks here are contamination of your material, of your resin, cross-contamination if you happen to use multiple different materials in the same resin vat. Warping, shrinking can happen when you polymerize large areas, but also the quality of your light source, it can fade, it can lose power, so your polymerization rate goes down. In post-processing, you have to remove supports. If you don't remove enough, if you remove too much, uncured resin needs to be properly cleaned off. Also here, you're probably using a UV oven to cure the parts. What if you have a light source failure? You typically don't look into the UV oven. So is your part properly cured? And then testing. So what are the acceptance criteria for releasing a part? Is it still biocompatible after your processing? So I think validation of the whole process is quite important. If we look at the materials, using a certified material is not enough. It only tells you that under the perfect conditions, you can make biocompatible parts. So do check the disclaimer of your material supplier. But do you get a certificate of analysis with every batch of material? How do you store the parts? UV resins are light sensitive. Also, how long do you use resin? It ages. How often do you reuse it? And then the work environment, there's not just risks to your part, but also to the user. So there's like volatile organic compounds. So make sure it's ventilated properly. Resin is an irritant to your skin. And just overall cleanliness is also very important in the work environment. And then we haven't even spoken about the largest risk of all, which is people. Are they properly trained? Does the engineer know what to do, what to look for? What if you have a non-conforming product? How do you ensure that it doesn't get released accidentally? And how do you record feedback, and what do you do with it? And does it actually make you better? So I think a QMS makes you think about all those risks, and implementing it is a form of risk control. And here I listed a number of benefits of a quality management system. And apologies, the list of benefits was longer than the page, so it goes on and goes on. But other benefits are regulatory compliance. It's important. It's obliged even to have patient safety, consistency and reliability, efficiency, but also cost saving, continuous improvement, traceability, supplier management, you name it. So a lot of people are wondering how to start with a quality management system. My suggestion would be, and this is also how I started, read the ISO standard. And probably you have to read it a few times, and you will notice that a lot of things in there, when it starts making sense, you do them already, you just maybe didn't document it. Analyze your risks, mitigate your risk, be aware of the regulatory requirements, but also read guidance documents. And there's a lot of interesting guidance out there that helps you. Get help from a good consultant, but do know also that you can't pay a consultant to build your entire QMS. You have to put in the work yourself, and management commitment is definitely also a requirement. But then I think to close off the $64,000 question, it seems that they call it in the US. I think I would say $1 million question. This is, I think, what you should always wonder. This is the most Dutch picture I could find of me and my boys. But do you feel 100% comfortable using your 3D printed device for the surgery when it should happen to your partner or your child? I think that's should also be part if you're in the back of your mind. All right, that was it from my side. I think I went a little bit over time.
No problem. So guys, I forgot to mention how to ask questions. Please enter your questions in the QA box. We have option to ask speaker questions after their presentation, as well as at the end when we have the panel discussion. So Eric, thanks for giving us very comprehensive overview of, this QMS system basically. And you did mention that you cannot rely on consultants for everything. And that is where my question is how do you work with someone in a hospital, for example, and who just want to make sure they're doing everything properly? Like, what kind of work do I have to do? What are some of the examples of homeworks I need to do?
Yeah, well, basically, I've seen that most point of care facilities are quite small teams. So usually it's 2 engineers or so have to do the bulk of the work. So yeah, it's usually It's mainly about documenting everything properly. But once you have the system set up and you document it the way you work, it's also easier to transfer when someone new comes in. But then it's all about indeed recording and making sure that everything you have done is properly documented. But yeah, it's a documentation effort, and that's why you need a tool that helps you do that easily, I think. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to go through another kind of software or cloud environment where you normally don't do the work. So, and that's why we would really advise to use some kind of wiki platform, as I do.
Okay, so you have a software platform people can use.
I simply use a commercially available platform that's very affordable.
Now, what if I haven't purchased my 3D printing system at all? Like, starting with a blank page, basically. Would it be helpful to, how are you going to be able to advise the team what kind of equipment to buy? Where can you start your work at the point?
Yeah, well, I'm currently also doing that together with a hospital, indeed, just identifying the proper machine, but also everything that goes around it. It's not just buying the machine, but also indeed, especially if you talk about resin printing, you need to clean stuff. So you need IPA, you need to post-process, you need software to go around it. You probably need compressed air. So the whole setup of the lab it goes beyond just the machine. And indeed, that's what I have the experience. So I can help them there, which I'm doing currently. But always, indeed, in the back of my mind is also, start documenting early. So it's not a big effort to do that in hindsight. And just make sure you do it from the start, and then it becomes easy.
In the back of my head, I'm thinking, I just got a resin printer at the beginning of this year. I'm pretty sure I do not pass the quality control. Wish I have talked to you earlier.
Well, I said they're pretty accurate, so I think in terms of accuracy, you're good to go.
Yes, but I didn't realize I have to manage all these toxic materials, and I have to create a new vent in my home. That is new. So anyhow, but thank you so much, Eric, for an excellent presentation. We'll come back later at the end of the panel discussion and have more questions from the audience. And again, if you have any questions, guys, just put it in the QA box, because I am a one-woman show and I can't keep track all the chats. But feel free to use chat to introduce yourself, connect, post your LinkedIn link or social media, whatever. It's yours. That's your playground. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. All right, who's next? Let's see. I'm also managing two computers as well. Sorry. Oh, here we go. Oh, our next speaker is Jay Banerjee. Jay, can you click on the webinar button at the bottom and then come onto the stage, please? This is our virtual stage. Thanks for joining us today. Jay is the CEO and co-founder of ImmersiveTouch. You're also muted. Make sure you're not muted. There you go. Okay, you ready to go?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be here, and excellent presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. A sec. All right. So ImmersiveTouch is a point-of-care 3D solution for hospitals. And when Jenny asked me to join this, I was really excited to share some of the work that we're doing. ImmersiveTouch is at the forefront of personalized healthcare. And so what we do is we integrate AI, VR, AR, and 3D printing into a cohesive point-of-care solution. We launched this in 2020, and we're collaborating with Mayo Clinic. This platform is FDA cleared. We have a global presence with a dedicated sales and support team. We've raised $5 million, and we have a national distribution agreement with Zimmer Biomet to help launch this. And specifically, I wanted to talk today about trauma and how 3D printing can really make an impact in trauma care. So there's 5 million patients who undergo trauma surgery, 300,000 of which are in facial trauma. And some of these patients, most of them require 24 to 48 hour intervention. And so unfortunately, the current virtual surgical planning method is typically around 2 weeks, sometimes a week, but typically 2 weeks. And that leads to suboptimal outcomes and longer procedure times. And that's because the current surgical planning is time prohibitive. As you see here, the steps within current virtual surgical planning, there's about 6 steps: taking a CT scan, sending that to the vendor for virtual surgical planning. Biomedical engineers then plan that case using CAD or other software tools. All of this takes about a 1 or 2 week waiting time for the vendor to then receive the 3D printed parts and guides. And then that is then sent to the hospital. So typically, the major vendors here take about 2 weeks, and trauma care takes really about 2 hours. That's what we need here. So with trauma planning using ImmersiveTrauma VR, we can segment 3D models from CT and MRI scans. We can make it automatically segment and produce that into a VR model. Planning fracture fixation and fracture reductions in immersive trauma is about 35 times faster than traditional methods. And we can also use some innovative tools like mirroring to create alignment in that 3D visual field, which then helps create better alignment, which favors bone healing and diminishes risks of complications. It's a VR-based surgical planning application. And so immersive trauma allows for 360 viewing, inside-out viewing. You can actually fly into the anatomy and get different views that standard CT scan or 2D softwares cannot provide. We can also provide accurate measurements and bone manipulation in the tool. And this is FDA cleared, and we've produced studies that show that the hardware and the anatomy are 1-to-1 to their real-life counterpart. So planning in immersive trauma can take as little as 5 minutes, and these models are exportable in a format suitable for point-of-care 3D printing. So how that works is, we automatically segment the CT scans, and we send that to a 3D printer at the point of care. And then these 3D printed models are pretty much the fixated models of a fracture. So in this example, like a facial fracture, the surgeon fixes the fracture, exports that as an STL file, and then the hospital can print that out, or the vendor can print that out and send that model to the surgeon. So then they can pre-bend that plate and produce a customized solution to the patient. So this is all personalized custom care, and going beyond trauma, it's really a universal platform where we're the first surgeon-driven AI platform that really provides key insights that drive decision-making. What's unique about ImmersiveTouch is that it's a surgeon-driven platform. You can actually use VR tools, plan cases on your own without relying on a biomedical engineer. And not that biomedical engineers don't have a place in this, they absolutely are a critical component of this process. But what we're allowing is for surgeons to take control and for the physician to take control and allow that 3D volume and visualization to be truly 3-dimensional in a VR environment. And then that produces 3D printed models, 3D printed guides. We also produce augmented reality holographic models that could be utilized during the operating room. So with this improved surgical workflow, the VR surgical planning and 3D printing can be really sped up and utilized truly at the point of care. We want point of care 3D printing to be easy, seamless, and surgeon driven. So as soon as the CT scan is produced, we produce a VR model, fix the fractures, and then that's all done hands-on by the surgeon. that could then be reviewed and then approved by the surgeon and then printed out at the point of care. So the traction has been really good. We launched the service in around 2019, and we've shown steady growth. This year has been our best year yet. And we've got the attention of Mayo Clinic Ventures, who we are collaborating with to expand this into orthopedics and cardiothoracic applications. We started in craniomaxillofacial in trauma, and we're steadily expanding the use cases of this platform, and we're excited to integrate both AI, 3D printing, and spatial computing platforms to create that cohesive experience for the hospital. And we're fortunate to be implemented in more than 70 hospitals globally. And here are some of our domestic, national, US hospitals that we're proud to be working with. So with that being said, I'd like to open it up for question and answer. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jay. It was interesting about your presentation. Thank you so much for a great presentation, by the way, is that I came across quite a few actually software, different angle of tackling using both VR, AR, and 3D printing along the workflow. What do you think your competitive edge is?
It's the usability, the surgeon-driven aspect of it, the usability of surgeons to automatically plan these cases with their own hands.
So you said it takes 5 minutes to get a segmentation done. What about surgical? Yeah, go ahead.
The segmentation itself takes about 30 seconds, but the planning process takes about 5 minutes.
I see. And what about the surgical guides? Because I saw one of the pictures you have surgical guides there. Like, is this an automated process that you can just create a guide automatically, or you have to know some engineering?
Yes, ImmersiveTouch is a unique company in that we're not just a software company. We also have biomedical engineers on staff that help produce 3D guides and surgical guides, which we're FDA cleared to produce. Mm-hmm. So it really helps create a total solution and not just a one-dimensional platform.
So does that mean you have to put the engineer in Mayo, or how does that work?
No,
that you can have a...
No, all the engineers are centralized here in Chicago. We're a Chicago-based company. And yeah, we have about 40 employees here in Chicago. And so we don't have to, the expense of that, we want to be cost effective as well. It's not just about producing amazing technology and solutions. It's also about cost and reducing cost and being more cost effective than current solutions, like virtual surgical planning, which costs $2,000 to $5,000 a case. So we want to be, a lot more cost effective.
And so for the trauma cases, because the turnaround requirement is much higher, do you have a different arrangement?
Yeah, the trauma solution is completely point of care based. And, we partnered with 3D printing companies, and hospitals can easily implement a 3D printer if they'd like to, or they could work with a third-party 3D printing vendor to produce these 3D printed models so that they can, pre-bend the plates and provide a customized solution to the patient. And so 3D printing is a critical component of a customized solution.
Got it. So we have a question from the audience, and I know Gaurav, he's actually from Formlabs, and he said, great presentation. What printer and material do you guys use for the guides? And what about the models? Yeah, so we're agnostic, and we're a agnostic company that works with third-party 3D printing companies, 3D printer companies. We work with all AR, VR hardware companies. So we're pretty much an agnostic platform, mm-hmm. and we work with most 3D printing companies. So do you have like a fleet of large printers or desktops? Like, what do you have most right now? Yeah, so one company, and Formlabs is a really good cost-effective solution that we recommend for point of care, right? So Formlabs makes a lot of sense. It's a great recommendation for hospital-based point of care. I think
they're easy to use, reliable, and then we can make those recommendations. And we also have a full-blown quality management system that we can also have that know-how. We can provide that know-how to the hospital system, because that's of utmost importance, as we saw in the first presentation here today. So I think all of that is important, you know.
So you help documentations with all the stuff that Eric was talking about as well.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then we have another question. Hey guys, please put in the Q&A box so that I can keep track, because it's kind of hard. We have another question from Ash. Which AI tool do you use for segmentation? Are you allowed to tell people? Is this a proprietary?
Yeah, that's proprietary.
Yeah, it's a very competitive landscape right now. So Ash, we have to wait until the industry matures to tell you. All right, well, thank you so much, Jay. We're going to come back for the panel discussion. I'm going to move on to our next group of speakers, actually from Stanford Healthcare. Thank you so much. Again, it's a fantastic presentation. So Shannon and Chris, if you guys are on the stage. Okay, see you later. Awesome. Okay, so Shannon Walters and Chris Lita Castillo are from the 3D quantitative lab at Stanford Healthcare, and I've known both guys for many years, and I remember the old good days when we can get together in a local pub and grab a beer. But they have been doing amazing works, and I've seen incredible growth of the lab itself in the last years, and so I'm very excited to see what they bring to the table today. So Shannon and Chris, I'll let you take over the stage.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jenny. It's great to be back. I can't remember